We're continuing on halachot of the 3 weeks, the mourning of Ben HaMesarim. We gave a little preface of the historical facts of both Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, these 3 weeks called Rodofeha. All the people who are running after Klal Yisrael, Hisigua Ben HaMesarim, which is the pasuk in Echa, and homiletically is darshaned that these period of 3 weeks are heavy days that unfortunately have been, as we mentioned, Bayit Rishon, to Yerushalmi Bayit Rishon also was breached, the walls of Yerushalayim in 17th of Tammuz. And we mentioned that even in the time of Daniel, when Daniel says those 3 weeks, the fancy bread and the wine and the meat did not come to my mouth, is a reference to the 3 weeks of Ben HaMesarim, says the Rav Sadia Gaon. So these are the 3 weeks that we are more mindful and cognizant of the heavy nature of these days. So therefore there are certain things we don't do, aside from the Minhagei Avelut, the increasing Minhagei Avelut of, for Ashkenazim in 3 weeks they don't shave. Again, the Sfaradim are much more, generally speaking, much more lenient in the laws of Avelut of the 3 weeks. Many of the Iraqi communities, they are a little bit more stringent, have developed more of the chumrot, of the stringencies of the Ramah of the Ashkenazi communities. But be as it may, we all have ascending level of restrictions of the 3 weeks. But aside from that, we also are cognizant of these days not being easy days. So therefore we stay away from things that are dangerous, right? We don't do certain things. It's brought in halacha that you should not even, reprehend a student with even the slightest of physical measures, because it could be dangerous, even though that you're using a very thin ritzuah. This when it was acceptable. That's every generation has its levels of rejection. What reprehending a child means you're giving them a sense of rejection. We don't want to open a parenthesis in Chinuch Habanim here, but nevertheless, sometimes it was physical. But really, the core element of it is you have a certain leverage with the child, and when they feel rejection from that loving, close relationship, that rejection causes them to think, and so on. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be any type of rejection in that way. So it shouldn't be physical, say the poskim, in this period of the 3 weeks. V'hamelamedim talmidim yizaru shelo la'akot talmidim afilu b'ritzua kala, says the halacha. V'chen ha'orim yizaru shelo yaku et yedehem b'shaot elu. Be careful, because is chashash sakana, and we are, we're mindful of that. Now, we mentioned also in the additional Minhagei Avelut, the Chasidim v'Anshe Maaseh, they say the seder of Tikkun Chatzot every day between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, not just at night after the halachic midnight, but also after the halachic midday, which actually makes it much more accessible for many people who usually they have an earlier curfew and bedtime, and they can't make it to the Chatzot HaLayla. These days are, days of opportunity for saying the psukim of Tikkun Rachel, sitting on the ground and lamenting and mourning the Churban of Batei Mikdash, and it's a beautiful minhag. Now, as we mentioned before, the Shulchan Aruch says that Yerei Shamayim should be doeg ra'oi lekol Yerei Shamayim, says the Shulchan Aruch, liot doeg umeser al Churban Beit HaMikdash, at the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, in Sif Gimel, in Siman Aleph, Sif Gimel, that every Yerei Shamayim should really try to do Tikkun Chatzot even during the course of the year, but obviously davar beito matov, that during these days, a person that could do it, take a few minutes out of their busy schedule to do Tikkun Chatzot after the halachic midday, that would be also something beautiful to connect with the reality of these days. There are other such halachot. For instance, the restriction against saying Birkat Shehechiyanu. Can you say Birkat Shehechiyanu? Shehechiyanu means you're just saying literally, a bracha that Hashem let us live and bring us to such amazing day, right? Is it such amazing day? This is not such amazing period. So some of the poskim, because of this, right, that a person should stay away from having a new fruit, anything that requires saying Shehechiyanu, not because of the joy necessarily of having a new fruit, but because, how can you say Shehechiyanu in this period of time, which is not such a great period, and you say, Hashem brought us to such amazing time. So that's, including a new fruit that needs Shehechiyanu, a new set of clothing that would need Shehechiyanu, and so on, because now how can you say Shehechiyanu v'chiyemanu v'higiyanu razman hazeh? Now, this obviously has become the minhag that we don't say Shehechiyanu during the period of the 3 weeks, but at the same time, if you have, for instance, a fruit that it's very seasonal, and immediately after the Shabbat, you can't really find it anymore. It's like there for a few weeks only, and you didn't get your hands on it before Shvat Tammuz, and now you have it. You want to benefit from this fruit, and waiting 3 weeks means you're not going to have it this year, right? Nowadays it's a little easier because of the refrigeration and the whole industry of transportation and so on and so forth. But in the real world, you would definitely have such things that they have very short-lived seasons. But even nowadays, sometimes it's a problem. So if you have that type of fruit, then on Shabbatot that are between the Ben HaMesarim, halachically speaking, you can say Shehechiyanu. So therefore, if you have that type of scenario that it's mamash time sensitive, you're gonna miss it. So then, buy the fruit, have the fruit during the course of Shabbat. This way, you could say Shehechiyanu as well. Now, many people stay away from saying Shehechiyanu also on Motzei Tisha B'Av because, as we will discuss, the Gemara says the majority of Beit HaMikdash was burnt during the course of the 10th day of Av. They started the fire in the evening of Tisha B'Av, right before night, and the majority was burning actually during the course of the 10th day of Av, right? So that to the degree that the Gemara says, if I was there, I would set up the Ta'anit to be on the 10th of the Asiri B'Av instead of being on Tisha B'Av. The Gemara says the only reason that we do it Tisha B'Av is because Atchalta the Pur'anut Adif. That the beginning of a Pur'anut is more, when you want to commemorate a difficult time, you go after the beginning when it started, even though that the subsequent days were more difficult days, but you go after the beginning. But because the majority was burnt during the course of the 10th of Av, many communities, they stay away from a lot of things, music, this and that, until at least the Chatzot of the 10th of Av, so extension of the halachot of Avelut, which we will discuss Be'ezrat Hashem, but this will include this item as well, that we stay away from saying Shehechiyanu on Asiri B'Av in that way as well. So another halacha that is there in regards to the Shehechiyanu is things that you can't not say if you miss it. For instance, you have Pidyon HaBen that falls to be in the 3 weeks, right? What are you going to say? Not say Shehechiyanu. The Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim in Eretz Yisrael have a minhag that the father says Shehechiyanu by a Brit, right? So you're not going to say Shehechiyanu just because it's 3 weeks. Obviously, Milah and Pidyon HaBen that falls to be in Ben HaMesarim, Mevarchim Shehechiyanu. you can't, you don't want to opt for saying Shehechiyanu, but if it's the only time you could do it, and you're going through the Brit, you're going through the Pidyon, obviously you're going to be saying Shehechiyanu because you can't push it off till later. Now, we already mentioned that the same thing is even for those optional things. We're not going to ask you not to have a certain type of fruit if it's only going to be found in these 3 weeks, because you're going to be saying Shehechiyanu. No, buy it, have it on Shabbat, and better to leave it for Shabbat, and you'll have it and you benefit from it. Now, the same would be for any extenuating circumstances. For instance, a pregnant woman that desires something, the Gemara says that you got to give it to him. They agree that if it's a real craving, even on Yom Kippur she would break a fast, right? So if she craves this fruit now, right? She sees it, she craves the fruit. So, oh no, Shehechiyanu, of course you're gonna give it to her. It's Shehechiyanu, and that's fine. Any of these extenuating circumstances are mutar, because again, this is a minhag based on the fact that lo yafeh, it's not fitting to say Shehechiyanu v'Giyanu Azman Hazeh these difficult days, but in any extenuating circumstance, as we discussed those 3 scenarios, you would be able to say Shehechiyanu, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about music and weddings and dancing and all that in the next year. Chazak Baruch.